Welcome back. If you're new here, settle in. You picked a good night for it. Have you ever had the feeling that someone you've known for years has shifted somehow? Not changed exactly, just gone slightly off. The wave is the same, the laugh is the same, the words all land in the right order, but something underneath doesn't quite arrive the way it used to. You tell yourself you're tired, you move on. Tonight's episode lives in that space. 6 stories, wrong people, wrong places, wrong help. The kind of horror that doesn't announce itself. It just sits quietly in a room you've already walked into. If you've been here before, thank you for coming back. If tonight is your first time, consider subscribing. Not as a favor, but because people who like this channel tend to need to come back. That's just how it works here. Headphones in. Let the room go quiet, stop moving around for a bit. Here's the first one. The man on Locust Street. I worked HVAC for a company called Brennan Brothers out of Youngstown for most of my adult life. Started at 23, left at 51. 28 years of crawling under houses and into attics and into crawl spaces that smelled like something had died in them 2 winters back, which was often exactly the case. My back is not good now. My knees are not good, but the work was straightforward, and I liked that about it. You go in, you find what's wrong, you fix it, you leave. The job had a clean shape to it. I lived on Locust Street in a town called Stoneford, Ohio. Population maybe 4,000. One main drag, a hardware store, a couple of diners, a gas station I stopped at every single morning for a large black coffee. The same woman made it. She knew my name. That's the kind of town it was. My neighbor 3 houses down was a man named Keith Denton. Dent, everyone called him. Retired pipe fitter, early 60s when I first met him, moved to Locust Street the same summer I did. That would have been June of 2006. I know the year because we moved in the same week. His truck was at his place when mine was at mine, and his daughter came out to wave. Hello. That's the only time I saw the daughter Dent, and I were friendly in the way neighbors on quiet streets are friendly. We waved, we talked across driveways sometimes. He had a mug he brought outside every morning. Wide-mouthed ceramic, dark red, hand-painted. A thing his wife had made him before she passed. He drank his coffee from it standing on his front step. Same time every morning around 7:15, 7:30, somewhere in there. I'd back out of my driveway and he'd raise it. Not a full wave, just the mug. Lifted about an inch or 2. I'd put a hand up in return. Small thing. But when you see it every working morning for 12 years, it becomes part of the clock you don't know you're running. The first thing I noticed was in the summer of 2018, July, late in the month. I was backing out of the driveway, morning light already harsh, and Dent was on his step with a mug. He raised it. I raised a hand back and pulled into the street, somewhere on the drive to my first job of the day. I was going out to Millhaven that morning, a farmhouse with a failed compressor. I thought that wasn't quite right. I couldn't say how. He raised the mug the same way he always did. He was wearing his usual kind of thing, loose gray shirt, work pants, boots on even in July. The gesture was the same gesture, but it had been slightly early. The arm came up before I'd fully committed to reversing, like he'd been watching for the moment and had started the movement a half second too soon. You react to a wave. You don't anticipate it. I told myself I was tired. I was working overtime that summer, a lot of commercial contracts stacked up, and I let it go. The second thing was about 6 weeks later. I happened to be home during the day. A job had canceled, and I was out front clearing some dead branches off the side fence. Dent came out of his house around noon. He walked to his car, put his hand on the door handle, stopped. He turned and looked down the street in the direction of the post office. He stood there for maybe 80 or 90 seconds. Nothing about that is strange on its own. People stop and think, but the way he was standing bothered me. He wasn't thinking. People who are thinking look down or they look at nothing in particular. He was watching the corner, precise attention on a fixed point, like he was waiting for something specific to come around it. Nothing came. He got in his car and drove away. I went inside and made lunch and didn't think about it again until the third thing. Third thing was October. I was raking my front yard and Dent walked over, stood at the edge of my property. He always respected lines. Dent did. Never stepped onto your grass uninvited, and said, getting colder. I said, yeah, finally. He said, you've had this house a long time. I said 12 years in June. He nodded, he said, right, and then he turned and went back inside. Now, 12 years in June, Dent had moved in the same week I did. He had been on that street for the exact same length of time. He wasn't asking me how long I'd been there. He couldn't be. He already knew. But he said it like he was confirming a number someone had told him, like he was double-checking. And when I gave him the number, he just said right. The way you say right when you've confirmed a fact you needed to check. I stood in my yard with the rake and thought that was strange. And then I thought maybe he forgot he was 66 by then. People forget. I let it go, but I want you to understand something. By that point, I had already been keeping count, without knowing I was not a list, not conscious, just a running register in the back of my head. Mornings the mug came up slightly too early. Pauses before he spoke that felt like searching, not thinking. One afternoon I waved across the yard, and there was a delay before he waved back. The kind of delay that happens when you're watching for a social cue rather than participating in a moment. I'd accumulated all of these things without naming them, and I think the reason I hadn't named them was that naming them would have meant deciding what they added up to. I kept not doing that. In February of 2019, I ran into a man named Joe Castor at the hardware store. I'd hired him for some carpentry work years back, lived on the east side of town, knew him vaguely. We talked for a few minutes in the fastener aisle. At some point, I don't know why, I said Dent's been a little off lately. Joe looked at me. He said, Dent? Keith Denton? I said. 3 doors down on Locust. Joe went quiet for a second. Then he said he'd heard Keith had passed. He thought it was last spring, his church. Somebody there knew the daughter. He said he'd heard it was a heart thing. Found by a home health aide. I told him he must have the wrong person. I'd seen Dent that very week. Joe looked uncertain. He said he was pretty sure. I drove home. I walked past Dent's house, curtains closed, not unusual in February. Car in the driveway. No mug on the step. I found the obituary that night without much effort. Keith Allen Denton, 66. Died April 14, 2018. Survived by a daughter in Pittsburgh. Services were private. April 14, 2018. That was 3 months before the morning the mug came up too early. I sat with that for a long time. There's an explanation that is probably correct. Dent had a daughter. Maybe she, or someone from the family, had been staying in the house, handling the estate. Or just living there. I don't know what arrangement they'd have made. She would have been roughly the right age by then. Close enough that at a distance, seeing what I expected to see, I'd have filled in the rest. Confirmation bias. 12 years of the same face and the same gesture, and the same time every morning. You don't really see the person anymore. You see the slot they occupy. That's what I tell myself, and I think it's probably true. But there's one detail I haven't been able to work through. In October, when the man came to the edge of my yard and said, "You've had this house a long time," he said it like he was confirming something. Like someone had given him a number, and he wanted to check it against the source. And I told him 12 years in June. He said, right? And I think about that. The confirmation, the right. Whatever was in that house had been there since at least July, possibly since May or June. 4 months, maybe 5. And it had gone about its routine. The mug, the step, the wave apparently well enough that none of my neighbors had said anything, and I hadn't looked closely enough to know, and it had been watching me leave for work every morning, and at some point it decided to come to the yard and ask a question. And I answered it. I restructured my walking route that spring. Different loop, more exercise, I told people. I've kept it for 6 years now. The house sold in 2021, a family with 2 kids. They repainted the front. I've waved at them a few times. Nice people. I have not once felt the urge to count how long they've been there. Rules for the Takigawa Guesthouse. These are the house rules found posted in room 2 of the Takigawa Guesthouse, Nagano Prefecture. as I found them tucked between the mattress and the bed frame in April of 2022. I'm writing them down because I think someone should have them, and because I have already memorized them despite genuinely not wanting to. I was staying there for a work retreat. I translate financial documents from Japanese to English. I needed a quiet week without the apartment and the city, and a colleague had mentioned the guest house as somewhere he'd stayed. Inexpensive, clean, good mountain air. He had not mentioned the rules. They were written on a single piece of folded white paper in neat black handwriting. Both sides. I have translated them as faithfully as I can. Rule 1, checkout is by 10 a.m. If you require an extension, please notify the innkeeper by 8 a.m. Rule 2, do not use the bathroom at the end of the hall after 11 p.m. The plumbing is old and the sound carries to the adjacent building. Rule 3, do not leave food in your room overnight. The area has wildlife. Rule 4, the rear garden is locked at sunset. Do not attempt to access it after this time. Rule 5, breakfast is served from 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. The innkeeper does not take requests. Rule 6, the mirror on the south wall of room 3 is original to the building. Do not look at it after dark, if you can avoid it. If you have already looked, leave the lamp on for the rest of the night. Rule 7, if you are in room 4, do not open the window facing the cedar grove between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. They are the innkeeper. Do not open the door. The innkeeper does not come at night. Rule 9, if you have looked at the mirror in room 3 after dark, you may notice that the reflection lags do not count the seconds. Go to the front room and sit until morning. Do not return to room 3 until after sunrise. Rule 10, if you're staying in room 2 at some point between these hours, you may hear a sound from the wall adjacent to the garden, like a palm pressing flat against the plaster and being drawn slowly downward. Do not speak. Do not turn on additional lights. Do not get out of bed. Lie still until it stops, and then lie still a while longer. I was in room 2. I read the rules at 9 p.m. sitting on the edge of the bed. I read them twice. I went and knocked on the innkeeper's door to ask about them, and she came out, looked at the paper, and said the rules were for guests who found them unsettling and preferred guidance. She said the building was old. She said some guests found old buildings easier with clear instructions. I went back to my room and lay in the dark and did not sleep easily. I woke at 3:12 a.m. I know the time because I checked my phone the moment I became fully conscious. From the wall to my left, adjacent to the garden, the sound was already happening. A slow drag, not aggressive, steady and deliberate, from approximately shoulder height to approximately floor level, and then nothing. I lay completely still. My eyes were open. I looked at the ceiling. The sound did not repeat. I stayed in bed until 6 a.m. I did not speak. I did not turn on a light. Those parts were not difficult, actually. What you feel in that moment is not panic. It is something more like suspension. Like the body understands that stillness is the correct response and gets on with it before the mind has finished arguing. I checked out at 9:30. Early at the door, I almost went back to read the rules again, to see if there was anything I'd missed, anything that told me what that sound was, or whether I had done the right thing by following Rule 10. I didn't go back. I think that was the correct decision. There is one more thing. I have not mentioned it until now because I'm still not sure how to say it correctly. At the bottom of the rule sheet, below Rule 10, written in slightly different handwriting, less neat, a little pressed into the paper, there was one more line. It said, if you're reading these rules before sleeping, do not read them again in the morning. The list will be longer. I did not read them in the morning. I do not know how long the list would have been, but the handwriting at the bottom was mine. The Mihalcea Road. My father drove long-haul trucks in northeastern Romania for most of his working life. This is something he told me when I was old enough for him to tell me things he wouldn't have told me when I was young. Between the villages of Cornu, Lunsi, and Faltitseni, there is sometimes a road. It appears after heavy rain, runs roughly parallel to the main track, and is not on any map my father was ever given. He saw it 4 or 5 times over 20 years of working that route. Locals call it the Mihalcea Road, after Mihalcea, which was a village relocated and largely demolished during collectivization in 1963. The buildings are gone. The people were resettled. The road that led into it from the east technically should not still be accessible. The last time my father saw it, he was 60, a few years before he retired. There was a man walking on it, a priest by his clothing. Full vestments, a leather satchel over one shoulder, moving steadily east. My father stopped the truck and called out to ask if he needed a lift. The priest came to the window. He declined the ride politely. He said he had an appointment in Mihalcea. Not far now, my father told him. Mihalcea had been gone for decades. The priest looked surprised. Not confused, my father said, surprised, as if he'd been given information that disagreed with what he knew. He said he had been in Mihalcea last week. He said the Vasile family was expecting him. My father told him again, "There is nothing there. The village is not there anymore." The priest said he thought my father must be mistaken, thanked him for stopping, and turned back toward the road. My father drove on. He told me the priest had looked entirely ordinary. The right age for a country priest, the right shoes, the right kind of weathered face. He had not been transparent or strange-looking. He had mud on his boots. That is the detail that has stayed with me most. I checked afterward. There had been no rain in that region for 3 days before the date my father described. The road was completely dry. Camera 7. Floor 23. I worked building security at a luxury residential tower in Mapo-gu, Seoul for 4 years. 31 floors, around 200 units. A mix of long-term residents and short-term corporate lets. I had worked the overnight shift for the first 2 years and then moved to the evening shift, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., which is when most of what I'm going to describe would have been on my watch. I want to be clear about something before I start. I am not a person who looks for things to be wrong. I am someone who spent 4 years in a job where the entire point was to verify that things were correct. Access logs, camera checks, patrol intervals, incident reports. I understand what a procedural error looks like. I know the difference between a system glitch and something that should be investigated. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that what I'm going to describe is not something I arrived at carelessly. Unit 2307 was on the 23rd floor. The tenant, a consultant, had relocated to Berlin for a project in early September. The management office had his key card on file, deactivated in a sealed envelope in the drawer under my station. No one else had a card for that unit. The unit was listed as vacant. That was the status when I came on shift every evening. On the 15th of October at 11:47 p.m., Camera 7, which covered the 23rd floor hallway, showed a figure approaching 2307 and using a key card to open the door. I watched it happen in real time. I was doing a camera sweep and I stopped on floor 23 because something had registered on the motion sensor. The figure was clearly visible. Business casual clothing, average height, moving without any particular hurry. They inserted the card. The door opened. They went in. The door closed. I checked the access log. The system showed the door had been opened at 11:47 p.m. by an unregistered card. Not the tenant's card. That one was deactivated and sealed in the drawer 3 feet from where I was sitting, an unregistered card, which should not have been able to open anything. I called the building manager. I was told to log it and someone would look at it in the morning. I kept watching Camera 7. The figure stayed inside for 2 hours and 4 minutes. The hallway was empty the entire time. At 1:51 a.m., the door opened and the figure walked out, turned right toward the elevator, pressed the call button. I had already switched to the elevator interior camera. The figure got in. They pressed a floor button. The elevator went up. They were on floor 23. The elevator went to floor 27. Floor 27 was the mechanical floor. It was not accessible to residents. There was no camera on floor 27. The elevator doors opened. I could see the threshold of the floor from the elevator interior camera. Concrete, a pipe running along the ceiling, and then the figure stepped out, and that was the last I saw of them. I filed the full incident report that night. The next evening when I came in, I was told by the building manager that it had been reviewed and resolved. Contractor access, she said. I asked, which contractor and what work had been done in a vacant unit at midnight? She said it had been handled. I pulled the original camera 7 footage 3 days later. The hallway was clean. Empty corridor 11:47 p.m. to 1:51 a.m. Nothing, no figure, no movement at the door. I checked the elevator interior for the same window. The elevator sat unused. No one pressed any buttons. The only thing remaining in the access log was a single entry I had not noticed before. Door sensor, unit 2307, 11:47 p.m. Unlock. 9 seconds later, lock. No card number, no associated user, just the mechanical event. As if the door had opened and closed by itself, with no one recorded doing it. I requested a transfer to lower floor coverage at the end of that month. They moved me to floors 1 through 10. I haven't looked at the floor 23 cameras since. The consultant came back from Berlin the following March and moved back into 2307. The building did the standard key handover. His card worked everywhere, lobby, gym, parking, the unit door on every other occasion they tested it. It did not work on 2307. The lock on 2307 didn't respond to his card or to the master card. The building locksmith came out and opened the door manually. When he examined the lock, he said the cylinder had been replaced. Different manufacturer, different mechanism. He had no record of any lock work done on that unit. He said the replacement had been done from the inside. The consultant took a different unit on the 21st floor. I don't know who changed that lock or how they got in to do it or where they went when they left via the 27th floor. I don't know who changed that lock or how they got in to do it, or where they went when they left via the 27th floor. What I think about most is the card. An unregistered card that opened a deactivated door. Whoever it was didn't pick the lock, didn't force it, didn't bypass anything. They had a key that fit a lock that hadn't existed yet. Anna's note. This is a note found inside a donated paperback at the library of the Igreja São Francisco Parish in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. The book is a second-hand Portuguese translation of a novel from the 1980s. The note was folded and tucked behind the back cover. It is handwritten, in neat blue ink, signed only Anna. It is undated. The note reads as translated. My grandmother gave me a bundle of dried herbs tied with red thread to nail beside my front door. She said it would keep certain things out. She didn't name what things. She said I would understand when I lived alone, and she was right. I can't describe it except to say that sometimes when I stood at the door from outside, the air had a weight to it, a kind of resistance, and when I stepped inside, the weight wasn't there. Like crossing a boundary I couldn't see. I lived with this for 4 years, and after a while I stopped thinking about it because the inside was always fine. When my rent increased, I had to move to a smaller apartment in a different part of the city. The bundle was nailed to the wall with a broad nail. I tried to remove it, and it began to fall apart in my hands. My grandmother had told me not to break it, that breaking it would undo what it was doing. So I left it. I couldn't take it. I have been in the new apartment for 3 weeks. The air inside feels the same as the air outside now. There is no weight at the door in either direction. I don't know if this means the things are gone or if they have come inside with me. I'm leaving this note in a book because I don't want it in the apartment. If you found it, I want you to know that this is not a story. I'm a normal person. I work in administration. I'm not someone who writes things like this. Also, please do not bring the book back here. The library stamp on the inside front cover shows the book was checked out and returned once after the note was found. Someone brought it back. Not a glamorous job. The station had 4 pumps, a small shop, a coffee machine that jammed roughly twice a week, and a parade of lorry drivers and insomniacs and the occasional person who clearly should not have been on the road at 3 a.m. I was the night manager, which sounds more official than it was. The 3rd shift, I managed the overnight at a 24-hour petrol station on the A361, just south of Devizes in Wiltshire. For about 2.5 years, This would have been around 2015 to 2017. It was not a glamorous job. The station had 4 pumps, a small shop, a coffee machine that jammed roughly twice a week, and a parade of lorry drivers and insomniacs and the occasional person who clearly should not have been on the road at 3 a.m. I was the night manager, which sounds more official than it was. Not a glamorous job. The station had 4 pumps, a small shop, a coffee machine that jammed roughly twice a week, and a parade of lorry drivers and insomniacs, and the occasional person who clearly should not have been on the road at 3 a.m. I was the night manager, which sounds more official than it was. It mostly meant I was the one responsible if something went wrong and there was nobody else to blame. In December of 2015, a man named Owen turned up for the 11 p.m. shift. I had never seen him before. This was not unusual. Turnover at the station was high. The owner, a man named Gerard, who I spoke to maybe once a week, had a habit of hiring people and forgetting to mention it until they showed up. So when Owen came in, introduced himself, and said Gerard had put him on the overnight. I didn't push it. I was short-staffed. He seemed straightforward. He knew how to work the till. Not just the basics, the full system, including the fuel type override that you had to know to punch in manually when the pump number didn't reconcile. That wasn't in any manual. I'd figured it out from the previous overnight manager when I started, and I'd shown it to maybe 3 people total. Owen knew it already. I noticed that. I told myself Gerard had shown him during a walkthrough. Seemed reasonable. We worked the shift. Owen was quiet in the way competent people often are. No fuss, no questions, got on with stocking the shelves, handled the till when I was out doing pump checks, made himself a coffee. Around 2 a.m. the lorry driver who came through every single night, enormous man, always the same fuel card, always bought a cheese and onion pasty, came in and Owen said something to him about the road being quiet tonight, and the driver laughed and said it was always quiet when the weather was like this, and they chatted for 2 minutes, like 2 people who recognized each other. I thought that was a little strange. Owen was new, but maybe he just had the manner of someone who talks to strangers easily. It had been reset. The reset sequence on that machine is not obvious. You have to hold 2 buttons simultaneously while pressing a third in a specific order, and the instruction sheet is taped to the back of the machine, which means you have to pull the machine halfway out of the counter to read it. At 5:45 in the morning, Owen put on his coat, said it had been a solid night, told me the coffee machine had jammed around 4 and he'd reset it and left. I checked the coffee machine. It had been reset. The reset sequence on that machine is not obvious. You have to hold 2 buttons simultaneously while pressing a third in a specific order, and the instruction sheet is taped to the back of the machine, which means you have to pull the machine halfway out of the counter to read it. Been reset. The reset sequence on that machine is not obvious. You have to hold 2 buttons simultaneously while pressing a third in a specific order, and the instruction sheet is taped to the back of the machine, which means you have to pull the machine halfway out of the counter to read it. I had reset it twice in the past month. Both times I'd needed the sheet. I mentioned Owen to Gerard the following week. Solid first shift. I said good to have someone who knew the system. Gerard said who. I described him. Gerard said he hadn't hired anyone new in 6 weeks. He said there was no one named Owen on any application, any payroll record, nothing. He said if I wanted to bring in people off the street to help with the shift I needed to clear it with him first. I pulled the CCTV that afternoon. The footage for that shift was present and uninterrupted. December 12, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. I watched an hour of it. I was in every frame, working the till, stocking shelves, talking to the lorry driver at 2 a.m. I was alone in every frame. The space where Owen should have been beside me at the till, behind me in the stockroom, was empty. Just me moving around, apparently. Managing a shift entirely by myself, the till reconciled perfectly. Not a penny off. 7 hours a full overnight, balanced to 0. I remember Owen resetting the coffee machine. I remember watching him do it, his back to me. The machine pulled halfway out, and the machine had been reset. Someone had done it. I've gone back and forth on this for years. The kindest explanation is some kind of dissociative episode. I was working too many hours. I was exhausted. I invented a coworker and then performed both roles without being aware of it. That is technically possible. That is the explanation I gave myself for a long time. The thing I keep coming back to is the lorry driver. The driver laughed at something Owen said. I watched it happen. The driver registered another person in the room, responded to that person, had a moment of connection with them. The driver saw him too. I'm almost certain of it. I quit in April. I told Gerard it was for personal reasons. He didn't push it. Whatever was there that night, whatever Owen was, it ran a clean, professional 7-hour shift. It didn't steal anything. It didn't cause any harm. The coffee machine worked fine. I just don't know what it wanted in return. Right. That's 6 tonight. I won't do a lot of wrapping up. You know what you just sat through? The one about the neighbor is the one that's going to bother you the most in the morning, I think. Or maybe Owen. Owen bothers me in a specific, practical way I find hard to explain. If something tonight landed too close to home, leave it in the comments. We read them. We take the real ones seriously. Take care of yourselves out there. Lock the door, leave the light on if you need to. Same time next week.